Caregiver Reality, and you can find us on caregiverreality.com, where we have useful information, videos, and a variety of things that help to make the caregiver's life a little bit easier. For those of you that were just listening to the show and heard about the gentleman who was naked eating out of a dog food bowl, my first thought was, this man has dementia. All right, because we have seen that kind of behavior and worse in people for now the last 25 years. And for those of you that have had to live with circumstances like this, you know exactly what I'm talking about. Going forward with the show, I want you to understand that caregiving, and when I describe caregiving, family caregiving, I mean those who are taking care of a loved one who can no longer take care of themselves, or for that matter, possibly never could, in the case of a special needs child. However, one of the things that we need to understand is that the system, when I say the system, it's health care, it's long-term care, whatever you want to call it, has completely abandoned the family caregiver. For 25 years, I have been in this business, and I've been in it extensively. One of the first companies I started was owned by a long-term care insurance company, and we had an opportunity to produce software and information and resources that went out to tens of thousands of caregivers around the country. And for 9 years, that's what we did. And I had the opportunity to deal with many, many of those families and to hear stories that would make your hair stand on end. All right. And it's not an easy job of being a family caregiver. It's complex, it's complicated, and it's counterintuitive. And when I say counterintuitive, that's exactly what I mean, because if you have been dealing with dementia as a caregiver, you know that no matter what you plan on, and no matter how much you think ahead, one of the biggest problems you have is that it goes upside down in a moment's notice. I have great respect for caregivers. There's 60 million of them in the United States. There's probably 150 to 200 million worldwide, if not more, because we have no idea. Most people don't identify with being a caregiver. Most of the Hispanic population doesn't even have a word for caregiver. It typically turns out to be family member. And so it's very, very hard for people to raise their hand when you ask them, are you a family caregiver? That's why I use that definition. Are you taking care of somebody who can no longer take care of themselves? Why has the system abandoned us? It's a very good question. I've been asking it for 25 years. One of the biggest problems is nobody, and when I say nobody, I mean nobody, has really made an effort to study caregiving. When you ask your doctor, who may understand everything about the disease that your loved one is suffering from, how many classes or what he ever did in terms of finding out about a family caregiver, you will get a blank stare. One of the biggest problems that we have is that support groups, few as they may be, that are run by, and I'm not bashing anybody's profession, but most psychologists take a very clinical view of a support group, and they're looking at family caregiving as a disease that needs to be cured. Family caregiving is not a disease. It's a consequence of trying to take care of a family member, all right, who presents with all kinds of difficulties and complications, while that caregiver is also trying to deal with their own life. So many caregivers today are between the ages of 40 to 65. They're active, they're in the workplace, they have families, they're raising children, and on top of that, they may be taking care of grandma or grandpa or a parent, and trying to fit all that together is a very, very difficult task. And to be told that you should take good care of yourself when what caregivers really need is an understanding of what is practical problem solving for the issues that they are dealing with. And how do I acquire better coping skills? How do I fit my loved one's circumstances into my life? Because when you're dealing with cognitive impairment, and when I say cognitive impairment, I'm talking about the inability of an individual to no longer be able to process and think and determine for themselves what it is that they ought to do. All right. Now, many will argue with my definition of cognition, but for the moment, we'll just use it as a working term. Many people come and say, what's the difference between dementia and Alzheimer's? Well, dementia is like the umbrella. And so all Alzheimer's is not dementia, but all Alzheimer's is dementia, but not all dementia is Alzheimer's. There are 50 different kinds of dementia, including Parkinson's, Pick's disease. We could go down a very long list. Some dementias are reversible, all right, caused by pills, alcohol, delusional conditions. And for those that do suffer from that, the ability possibly to get off the alcohol, get off of the pills, have psychiatric help to be able to deal with delusions and hallucinations that are not caused by degeneration of the brain. That is the problem that we have today with Alzheimer's. Try as we might, what we understand about the brain, which is 3.5 pounds of the most exquisite piece of machinery that was ever built, 600 billion electrical connections that all have to work in nanoseconds in coordination with one another. There's no one particular area of the brain that acts alone and by itself. That used to be what we thought. There was one area for speech, another area for vision, et cetera, but we do know that the brain has multiple areas that must synchronize, and as I said, in nanoseconds in order for us to be able to do things. While I'm speaking to you now, my brain is telling my lungs to exhale, my diaphragm to do certain things, my lips, my tongue to take certain forms and shapes so that I can create words so that you can hear me. And if all of that doesn't happen in a split second, then what I will come out with is mumbling, jumbled messages, or the inability for you to understand me. So as we go forward, one of the things that I have specialized in is the family caregiver. That's who I devote my attention to, and for 25 years I have studied the family caregiver very, very carefully, not because they're a lab rat, they certainly are not, but because there are things that we can do to help the family caregiver make a better quality of life for themselves and others by having little techniques that work. Today, for instance, while I was on a number of websites that deal with family caregiving, I came across 3 or 4 different questions that were being asked by people who had submitted them. My mother-in-law with severe memory loss moved out of state and refuses help. What can we do? I hate who I've become since caregiving for my father-in-law. Advice to myself and anyone else miserable with their current situation. These are questions and statements that are being made by caregivers around the country and around the world. And here in Florida, we are really at the epicenter. We're in the middle because we have more aging going on, more caregiving going on, and more clinical folks that are trying to help resolve the issues than almost anywhere else in the country. One of the biggest problems that we have is that the clinical profession, as it rightly should, focuses on the patient, your loved one, whether it's Alzheimer's, whether it's Parkinson's disease, whether it's chronic illnesses like congestive heart failure, pulmonary, whatever it may be. They are focused on the caregiver, they're focused on the patient, while nobody really pays attention to the caregiver. For years and years, the caregiver has been marginalized by the clinical system. When you would go in and take your loved one in to see the doctor would address the patient and treat the caregiver as though they were just a chauffeur. All right? Never really dealing with it, but not realizing that who is the real decision maker for their loved one when their loved one can't make decisions. And this is a big problem that we're facing in America today, is that with more and more clinical care changing because of the Accountable Care Act and other issues that we won't get into for the moment, all right? Clinical systems are trying to figure out how are they going to get together with other clinicians, other capabilities, whether that's lab, x-ray, hospitals, and bundle their care and make sure that they can meet the criteria for Medicare, for the insurance companies to be able to direct care at more affordable prices by being able to make it more efficient. It's something that we really want to see happen. That was where Obama was coming from when he created it. However, trying to figure out what it is and how we're going to do it has not been an easy task. And every day we see different statements being made, different ideas being put forward, and the clinical system is having a very, very difficult time trying to deal with this. In the meantime, it hasn't changed anything for those that are dealing with a loved one at home. And if you take a hard look, we understand that we can't keep people in the hospital, all right? It's too expensive, and it's not the place for long-term care. When we take a look at nursing homes, skilled nursing, and we try and get a better handle on that, what we've seen, and I've mentioned it before, is that we have reduced the amount of nursing home beds in this country over the last 3 to 5 years from about 1.7 million down to about 1.5 million. Why? Because it's very, very difficult to bring out a bottom line when you're being reimbursed for the most part by Medicaid. Medicaid is the only federal source for funding for doing work inside of a nursing home, with the exception of rehab. If you come out of a hospital, you need work done in rehab because you've broken a hip or you've had a stroke and you need occupational and physical therapy. Rehab will be done, but it'll be done under Medicare, all right? For those of you that haven't, and I have, right now in Palm Beach County, Florida, where we're talking to you from, it's about $295 a day for a semi-private in a nursing home. Maybe a little more, maybe a little less, depending upon which facility it might be. So you're dealing in a number that's somewhere between $8,500 and $9,250 a month. So I don't know how many of you, even with long-term care insurance, can afford close to $100,000 a year. Most people can't. And so when they go into a nursing home, either they have spent all of their money, they will spend all of their money, or Medicaid will have to step in and pay for it, all right? And so what is beginning to happen, all right, is that less and less are we able to put people into nursing homes, all right, and more, they've got to go home. And that's because the roof is free, the food is free, and we can watch a patient using what we think is the home health care system, which I will discuss later on, but that isn't always the best way to handle things, because one of the people that we have to recognize is the family caregiver, is the eyes and ears on a 7/24 basis. And if we don't support the caregiver, we're never going to be able to do home care. And so I think we're coming to a break. And so, Freddie, why don't you take us to the break?
Hello. Are you a family caregiver? Are you taking care of a spouse, parent, or loved one who can no longer care for themselves? Are you dealing with Alzheimer's disease and don't know what to do? Are you stressed, burned out, frustrated, and don't know where to turn? Have you realized that your doctor, lawyer, and mental health professionals don't have real practical answers? You need a non-clinical family caregiver expert that the professionals turn to. You need David Levy. He is a family caregiver expert with 25 years of active experience with thousands of family caregivers. He can help you provide a better quality of life for you and your loved one. Contact David Levy at dlevy@caregivered.org. That's dlevy@caregivered.org. Or call 561-482-0086. And let's get your mental road to healing started.
Right. Okay, we're back. And if you want to speak to us, I'm at 888-565-1470. And that website is caregiverreality.com. And you can see us on the website. You can reach and speak to experts and see what we've done. One of the things that we've been doing is I have had the unique experience and the pleasure of taking some of my support group folks that have been doing this for quite some time, and they have allowed us to film them while they are in the middle of discussions that range from anything from sexual activity to how to get your loved one to take a shower. All right. While that may seem a little strange, one of the biggest difficulties we have with dementia patients is hygiene. Trying to get them to take a shower, make sure that their clothes are clean, take better care of themselves. But that's difficult when you don't have the ability and you don't have the short-term memory. So any of you out there who are caregivers, who are taking care of someone who can't take care of themselves, I'm at 888-565-1470, and I would be happy to take an inquiry and direct my conversation back at you. One of the things that I do is I write and create research on the family caregiver. All right, and one of the things that has posed one of the biggest threats in America today is what I had been writing about a couple of months back, right before the Obama administration, when we were dealing with came back in office, and we were dealing with the fiscal cliff. And at that time, I called it the societal cliff. Why societal? Because it didn't affect all of society. It affected a part of it, a major part of it, however, because millions and millions of people are family caregivers. And one of the issues that we are now faced with, and that is the combination of aging. We are living longer. We have never lived this long because the medical profession has managed to jump right over Darwin. It's not a question of survival of the fittest. It's survival of the best medicated. And so many of us who would have gone and passed on a long time ago are alive. But the question is it a quality of life that we can enjoy? And can we do it without impacting the family and dealing with others to try and keep our lives workable and manageable? You know, when we have children, we raise them. It's a nurturing effort, and we trust that we can educate them and teach them the responsible ways so that as they get older, they will fly out of the nest and be constructive and beneficial citizens. When we get back to dealing with mom or dad or grandma or grandpa, it's just the reverse. We're not parenting them. We're trying to help guide them through the last quarter of their lives or the last third of their lives in a way that's meaningful and beneficial. The three legs of that stool of trying to maintain quality are dignity. It's always important to remember that even though somebody may have dementia or may be suffering from cognitive impairments, they're still entitled to the dignity of the person that they were and the person that they are today. All right? The next thing that we have to be concerned about is the quality of their life. How have we done and what have we done to allow them to thrive in the most effective way possible? Can we improve their setting? Can we make things better? And how much can we add to what may remain of their independence? So independence, quality of life, and dignity are the three issues that all caregivers strive for when dealing with a loved one. Many of these issues now are coming home to roost at a much younger age. I don't know how many of you realize, but we're seeing dementia, especially Alzheimer's, at an age and a time that we never expected to see it. One of my youngest caregivers has a husband who's 43 years old and has full-blown dementia. I have many in their late 40s, early 50s. We've never seen this kind of influx, or impact of dementia. And we're not exactly sure why. Every day the researchers go out and look. They've tried to put together medical formulas that can help us to try and explain and understand what we're doing. But so far, we haven't gotten very far. When you talk to the folks up in the northeast part of the county at Scripps and Torrey Pines and Max Planck Institute, they're making advances, but they're making advances with mice, with fruit flies, and with substitutes for the human brain. And so far, we really have not made a significant amount of impact. Every now and then, somebody will come up with an idea that seems really good, and it'll race through the world. It wasn't so very long ago that coconut oil was going to be the great salvation for people that had dementia. However, after an extensive amount of time and study where we went to some assisted living facilities that have memory care units and asked them to try out coconut oil, the only thing that we found was there was no significant difference in their cognitive capability. However, their cholesterol did go up, and in some cases, they had some real difficult intestinal issues. We have to be very careful, because what we're in the middle of right now is what I call the geriatric gold rush. Everybody is trying to get involved with the aging process, and they're trying their darndest to come up with credentials and approval processes that make the world feel that they know something more than others that have made a study of this for years and years. I'm casting aspersions at no one, but all of a sudden we have a tremendous amount of people that are senior advisors, and how they got there and what they do is still much of an enigma. If you'd like to call in and have a discussion related to that, I'm at 888-565-1470. That's 888-565-1470. Or go on the website and leave us a message. We'll get back to you. That's caregiverreality.com. And it would be my pleasure to deal with any issue that you have regarding family caregiving. As we go forward in the next few weeks, I'm going to be taking on very specific subjects that I would like to hear from the audience on as well. One of which has to do is when your loved one is no longer capable, such as with advanced dementia, in being the person that you would like them to be, all right, or the way they used to be, can you, all right, are you allowed, do you have permission to be able to go ahead and seek the comfort of another? I don't mean to go out and have a sexual affair, although you're big boys and girls and you can certainly do that. But when you've lost the ability to have somebody that you used to share everything with, that you had intimacy with, that you could rely upon to be the person there for you, can you now substitute with someone else in order to fill that void? Yes, you can. If you go on caregiverreality.com, you will find a couple of videos that we shot from support groups that dealt with that subject specifically. And without a doubt, everyone involved said yes. And the reason they said yes is because they had great relationships, good marriages, and when they lost the comfort and the ability to have that loved one be an active part of their lives, they sought to fill that hole. So those of you sitting out there that are listening and saying to yourself, you know, I'm a family caregiver, I'm dealing with exactly these kind of issues with my spouse, and boy, it would be nice to go out and have a pizza with somebody, maybe go to the movies, or just have a conversation. I want you to know that that's perfectly all right, and that if you can find some pleasure while you are being an active family caregiver, you deserve it. One of the reasons that we are so firm about that is because the stress and the burnout from not understanding what it means to be a family caregiver takes its toll. I have seen over 25 years caregivers dealing with folks with advanced dementia, such as Alzheimer's and Parkinson's, die before their loved ones. Why? They were so enmeshed in the caregiving, they forgot to take care of themselves. They didn't go to that doctor appointment. They didn't make sure that they were trying to watch their diet, get a little bit of exercise. People say, how can I do that and still take care? Because this is no different, and I know it's trite, but, just like with the airlines, you got to put your oxygen mask on first before you can help save anybody else. And so if you don't do a good job of being there for you, then you can't be there for anybody else. And I just want to say that it's been a pleasure. I'm sorry we didn't have any call-ins, but I'm looking forward to them next week, 1-888-565-1470. And remember to check us out on the website. That's caregiverreality.com, and get the information and the advice that you need. I'll be back next week to deal with your questions and to pick on any subject that you want as a family caregiver. Thank you.
You have been listening and watching David Levy, gerontologist and non-clinical family caregiving expert. Visit our website at caregiverreality.com and hear and see unscripted family caregiver support groups discussing all of the questions that you have wanted to ask but didn't know where to turn. Tune in again next time for more updates and special guests who bring their caregiving experience to you so that you can deal with your problems and hear how family caregiving is affecting fellow Americans just like you. The opinions expressed on the preceding sponsored program were strictly those of its hosts, guests, and callers, and not necessarily those of this station, its staff, management, or sponsors.